Right now, as we join you at 5 o'clock, long lines marking the very first day of early voting all across North Texas. A few technical difficulties did close facilities, and there were some unexpected issues. We'll discuss what went wrong and also what's being done to address some of the problems. Thank you for joining us today. I'm Doug Dunbar. It's great to have you on this gorgeous day. This is CBS 11 News at 5 and streaming online from my house to wherever you are with CBSN DFW. Let's get underway with Chopper 11, live right now over Our Redeemer Lutheran Church on Park Lane in Dallas. Voters here continue to line up at the polls, fairly lengthy line here. If you are determined by the way to vote today, time-wise, you have less than 2 hours now to cast your ballot in Dallas County. At Tarrant locations, they are beginning the process of closing down, so you may have to wait till tomorrow or the coming days. A poll worker's positive COVID test, meanwhile, that kept 3 voting centers from opening in time today and on time in Tarrant County. While lines of voters here started to form early this morning, our Jason Allen reports that elections officials ended up scrambling to get the polls opened.
Keller Town Hall has been the busiest early voting center in Tarrant County during the last 2 major elections, but not quite like this.
Especially early, we have 2 weeks to vote, to early vote, and then election day, we thought it was going to be less people, honestly.
The first voters ready to mark their ballots Tuesday instead discovered the voting center wasn't ready for them. A poll worker notified Tarrant County late Monday evening that they had tested positive for COVID-19, and they'd been at a poll worker training class late last week.
And our first priority was to make sure that the people who were in that class were notified and make sure that they started quarantining themselves and that they, schedule a test as soon as possible.
That led to a shortage of poll workers in Keller, as well as one site in the village of Woodland Springs in North Fort Worth and a senior center in Euless. The long lines that formed, though, didn't deter people. Instead of walking away to come back another day, they just walked to the end of the line, sometimes when they couldn't even see the end.
I feel that strongly. I'll wait in line. I want to get in there. I want to vote.
Say we make line to get on the ride. Why wouldn't we make line for this? What I consider the most important election for us.
The election supervisor said they've hired extra poll workers this year, anticipating COVID cases could pop up. And he said they'll look at pre-assigning backup crews to the locations closest to them so they can respond fast if it happens again. In Keller, Jason Allen, CBS 11 News.
To the other side of town, Dallas's Latino population represents the majority of people who live there, but voting turnout among Hispanics traditionally has been on the low side. As our Steve Pickett reports today, things are looking different this election in a number of Dallas Latino neighborhoods.
I'm the first generation that's able to vote in the family.
Valeria Ponce could have waited. Instead, the 18-year-old joined the line, a 3-hour wait to do what so many others in her life cannot.
Well, most of my friends don't have papers, so they won't be able to vote, especially like the president doing all this stuff. And my family is actually Latino, so I was like, well, might as well vote so we can change that. At
an early voting location in West Dallas, hundreds waiting hours outside the Oak Cliff Sub Courthouse.
This is so important. I wanted to make sure that my vote was going to be counted, and it was going to be counted early.
And more in line outside the Martin Weiss Rec Center. The faces today reflecting Dallas's ethnic and racial diversity. But these specific sites sit in heavily populated Latino neighborhoods. And waiting for hours on this first day of early voting took on a collective theme voiced by Hispanic voters here today.
The situation that we're in right now, I think that maybe people in the community are starting to see how important it is for us to make our voice heard.
I really think that it's the Latino community finally coming out and wanting to have their voices heard.
Because we see everything happen with discrimination, not with just Mexicans, but also with Black Lives Matter. So we need to just do something in order to change that, and that's why our vote is so important right now.
Having your voice turned into action with your vote. So many in these lines today saying it was worth the wait. In Dallas, Steve Pickett, CBS 11 News.
Steve, thank you so much. And for some today, voting was their first chance ever to cast a ballot. CBS 11's Brooke Rogers took some time to talk to some young voters about why they raced to the polls on day number 1.
It started first thing in the morning, voters standing in line for 2.5 hours or more. Some of them first-time voters eager to finally have a say in an election. 19-year-old Sofia Fernandez is visiting from the University of Miami, but this trip home meant a trip to the polls.
Obviously, I live on campus at college, and so it's kind of difficult to get mail and send mail and everything. And I really wanted to be able to vote for the first time, like in a presidential election.
She says she's been waiting her turn to exercise her civic duty.
It's exciting, you know, just the whole idea of being able to vote. I've always thought it was really important. And so finally being able to vote myself kind of makes me more feel like I'm being heard, I guess, or have the ability to make a difference.
A recent Harvard youth poll of 18 to 29-year-olds found that 63% of those surveyed say they will definitely be voting, compared to 47% in 2016. Young voters are typically underrepresented at the polls, but these voters think this election is different.
Yeah, I think everyone really understands how important, how crucial this election is. Hopefully a lot of young people in my age group realize that and will come out and vote.
They know there are obstacles, including paperwork, deadlines, and living out of state, but they hope motivation outweighs all of them.
I do understand the whole idea of there are long lines and it can be hot sometimes standing outside, but there also is the other side of that, which is it's really important to vote and to make your voice heard.
In Dallas, Brooke Rogers, CBS 11 News.
And as early voting gets underway here during this pandemic, Tarrant County's public health director today talking about one way to vote if people are concerned about COVID.
There is an option. There's curbside voting available. I would highly advise that those folks utilize that option. We certainly encourage them to go vote, so don't stay home. Certainly use the curbside option and go vote.
So curbside voting, if you don't know, where an election official will basically bring you a ballot to a voter, even in your car. This, by the way, has been available for people who have trouble walking or standing for a long period of time. It's been around. The elections administrator told us poll workers don't ask any questions. When someone asks for a curbside ballot, you simply have to ask. If you request service due to concern over COVID, it will be provided. We have everything you need to know regarding casting your ballot for the November election. You can peruse and make yourself a little smarter. Go through the info, cbsdfw.com. Just click on the Campaign 2020 tab.